is held in March.
It's shaping up to be a beautiful summer day in Sydney, with temperatures expected in the high 20s and low 30s. But Sydney-siders are being advised against spending it at the beach due to pollution. Reporter Jessica Rendell has more.
Well, the culprit is all that pesky rain that we've been getting through what's been a particularly wet El Nino summer. What happens when there's heavy rainfall is that all that water flows and sweeps pollution into Sydney Harbour and out onto the beaches. Now, we know that in recent times that overflow of water has then gone into the sewerage systems and the water treatment systems, and the overflow from that has then pushed sewerage and untreated water out into our beaches. So, doesn't sound like pleasant conditions to be swimming in, but there are water quality monitors in and around our waterways that have been testing the water for bacteria, and they've found that there are about 24 beaches that are currently unsuitable for swimming due to poor water quality and pollution.
Jess, you're at the beach now. Which ones are off limits?
Yeah, so as I said before, about 24 that are currently off limits, and they include Cabarita Beach, Frenchman's Bay, Rose Bay, and my personal favourite spot to swim in, the Red Leaf Pool at Double Bay, is currently also off limits due to pollution. Here at Bronte Beach, though, caution is advised. There's pollution possible in the water, but people can go for a dip if they want to take that risk themselves, Mel. So it's a gorgeous day here in Sydney today, and as you know, we've had so much rain over the last few weeks and throughout this very wet summer. So people are really out here in full force today, taking full advantage of that beautiful, beautiful weather that we're having.
And beachgoers in Perth's north say they're frustrated by a lack of transparency following the closure of a popular swimming spot due to an outbreak of potentially harmful algae. Authorities say there's no evidence the algal bloom is linked to a water treatment pipe discharging into the ocean nearby.
Ordinarily teeming with ocean lovers of all ages, Mullaloo Beach is now all but deserted, with swimmers told to keep out of the water. The cause of the concern, a bloom of trichodesmium, a fine algae also known as sea sawdust. Clumps of the brown bloom formed after days of high heat, combined with nutrient-rich water, posing a risk to public health. Long-term locals believe a sewage outlet pipe some 1,500 metres offshore is largely to blame.
It's rated by the National Outfall Database as one of the worst in Australia.
Aerial vision reveals the full extent of the issue. Yesterday's strong northerly winds blowing strings of algae back into the beach.
It's disappointing, and hopefully they'll be able to do something quickly to help sort it out.
It's very unattractive, and you don't know what's actually in there.
Kim Allen has been swimming at Mullaloo every day for decades. He claims concerns about the ocean reef pipe have been ignored by authorities for years.
Frustration, anger, and I guess it's this lack of transparency and collaboration between agencies and the community.
Local MP Caitlin Collins is also concerned for the future of the beach, helping to arrange a meeting with locals and representatives from the Water Corporation and the Department of Water.
In terms of the algae bloom that we have here at the moment, I've had confirmation from Water Corp that it is, there's been no changes in the conditions of the pipeline in the last few days.
The Water Corporation says there's no link between the treated wastewater pipe and the algal bloom. The corporation says the outfall is operating normally and in line with regulations. The beach is expected to remain closed until at least early next week. David Webber, ABC News.
Energy giant Santos has been given the green light to build a stretch of pipeline through Northern Territory waters as part of its Barossa gas export project. Santos has been given environmental approval after an assessment by the independent NT Environment Protection Authority. The NT EPA considered potential impacts of the gas pipeline, including on the marine environment, culture and heritage, and greenhouse gas emissions. The project, which will stretch from the Barossa Reservoir to Darwin, is estimated to be worth $6.4 billion to the NT economy and expected to create 600 local jobs through construction. A Victorian man will face court today after allegedly being caught with multiple illicit drugs and an impressive Lego collection. Reporter Gillian Area has the latest from Melbourne.
Police have arrested a 45-year-old man from Morwell, which is a town near Gippsland in eastern Victoria, in relation to alleged drug trafficking charges. As part of that arrest, police also seized 74 Lego boxes and 5 luxury watches. Police allege that these products were the proceeds of crime. Now, these seizures were part of a simultaneous search warrant that happened overnight here in Melbourne at suburbs like Essendon North, Brunswick and South Melbourne, and was the culmination of a 4-month-long investigation into an alleged drug trafficker. Now, during the search, police uncovered 180 kilograms of butanediol, which is a chemical similar to the drug GHB. It was worth $600,000. They also found bulk quantities of iodine and hypophosphorus acid. Both compounds are used in the mass production of methamphetamine. Police found illegal steroids, ammunition, and which included a handgun. Now, the man has been charged with a number of offences, including trafficking a large commercial quantity of a drug of dependence, trafficking methamphetamine, dealing with property being the proceeds of crime, and possessing precursor chemicals to a drug. Now, in a statement, Victoria Police's Acting Sergeant Brad Hobbs from the Fawkner Police Unit said, "Overwhelmingly, what users believe is GHB is actually 1,4-butanediol. The drug can be very unpredictable, and the difference between survival and a fatal overdose can be very small." Now, the man who's been charged will appear at Latrobe Magistrates Court today.
In news just in, an earthquake of 6.4 magnitude has struck the Tonga Islands. The United States Geological Survey says the quake happened just after 11 a.m. local time at a depth of 212 kilometres. The epicentre was 125 kilometres northwest of the island of Foa. No tsunami warning has been issued. Overseas, the US Justice Department has released a damning report on the police response to the 2022 Uvalde school shooting in Texas. The mass shooting at Robb Elementary School killed 19 children and 2 staff members. North America correspondent Jade McMillan reports from Washington.
Well, it details what it calls cascading failures, including the decision of police officers to wait for more than an hour before they entered the classroom where an 18-year-old gunman was armed with a semi-automatic rifle and where children had made phone calls pleading for help. The report criticises a lack of training for those officers. It says there were problems with communication and leadership, and that some of the failures in the immediate response carried through to the aftermath, that some families were told their loved ones had survived when they hadn't, and also that some of the survivors had delays in getting medical treatment. The Attorney General, Merrick Garland, says the victims, the survivors and their families all deserved better.
The 19 children and their 2 teachers who were stolen from their loved ones should be here today. They should have been targeted by a mass shooter. We must never forget the shooter's heinous act that day. And the victims and survivors should never have been trapped with that shooter for more than an hour as they waited for their rescue.
Well, this report follows other reviews at the state and local level, and it makes a series of recommendations in those areas like training and leadership in the hope that it would prevent something like this from happening again. But some of the families of those killed in Uvalde say there is really nothing surprising to them in this document. They know that they were failed and they want to see bigger changes made, especially when it comes to America's gun laws. The Congress did pass a package of legislation in the wake of Uvalde. It was the most significant bill in decades, and it made changes in areas like strengthening background checks for young gun buyers. But it didn't go as far as banning assault weapons, something that President Joe Biden has been calling for and something that he has reiterated in response to this report today.
Indonesia has declared a health emergency in East Java after 11 children contracted polio. The children, mainly on the East Java island of Madura, contracted the disease that Indonesia was declared free of a decade ago. In rare cases, polio can cause paralysis and isn't curable. Indonesian health authorities have implemented a rapid immunisation drive to vaccinate as many children in the area as possible. At least 12 students and 2 teachers are thought to have drowned in Western India after a boat taking them to a school picnic capsized. Up to 27 people are believed to have been on board when the boat capsized in the state of Gujarat. Survivors were rushed to hospital. The cause of the incident is being investigated. And Sam Yang is here now with your business news.
Good morning. US jobless claims plunged to the lowest level since September 2022. Initial claims for state unemployment benefits dropped to 187,000 last week. The unexpected decline signals the resilience in the US labour market and casts further doubt as to whether the US Fed will cut rates in its March policy meeting. The Australian share market has opened sharply higher after a tech rally on Wall Street. Let's take a look at the numbers. The All Ords and the ASX 200 are up around 1.2%. Most of the gains are coming from energy and consumer stocks. Turning to the Asian session, where the NZ 50 is up around 0.1% at the moment, markets across China and Japan will unwind shortly. Now in the US, all 3 major indices ended sharply higher, with the S&P 500 approaching record highs as AI optimism drove gains in Nvidia and other chip makers. The Dow Jones Index rose 0.5%, the S&P 500 rose 0.9%, and the Nasdaq Composite jumped 1.4%. Onto commodity markets now. Spot gold prices are on the way up as geopolitical concerns enhance the safe haven metals appeal. Crude oil prices also climbed after the International Energy Agency echoed OPEC in forecasting strong global oil demand this year. And the Australian dollar is trading higher, buying at around 65.7 US cents. And that's finance.
Well, it was an epic night and morning at the tennis. Anna Blinkova outlasted the 3rd seed and last year's runner-up against Elena Rybakina in a marathon 42-point tiebreak. In terms of points, it was the longest tiebreaker in a women's Grand Slam. That was followed by one of the great comebacks, with Daniil Medvedev coming from 2 sets down to win a marathon struggle, which finished after 3:30 Melbourne time this morning. As ABC Sport's Catherine Murphy explains, it's reinforced a scheduling dilemma for organisers.
Essentially, where we're at in the tournament now, Emma, the extra day is completely irrelevant because all the extra day does is you play the first round over 3 days. That means by the time you hit day 4, you're back on track. You've got to get through round 2 in 2 days. The reality of tennis and the needs of broadcasters and the commercial interests is the host broadcaster wants to show their news and they want 2 primetime matches to show after that, because there's always the risk in men's or women's that it could be either 3 bagels, that's a 6 love, or 2 bagels, and then you end up with people at home saying, where's the tennis? I don't know how you fix it. On the tours, they're trialling rules, Emma, this year, where you can't play past 11 p.m. or you have to ask the players' permission, but the Grand Slams aren't bound by that. I'm not sure that can ever be agreed.
Mexican cyclist Isaac del Toro Romero is holding on tight to the leader's ochre jersey in the men's Tour Down Under. Today's 4th stage will take riders from the River Murray to the beautiful southern coastline of the Fleurieu Peninsula. Charles Bryce reports from the Tour Village in Adelaide.
It was another exciting finish on stage 3, riders finishing in Campbelltown, not too far from the Adelaide CBD, and it was a quick finish as well. Riders going down the famous Gorge Road in hitting kilometre speeds of up to 100 kilometres, but again it was the Bora Hansgrove team that got Aussie Sam Welsford in exactly the right spot at exactly the right time. He once again timed his run to the finish line to perfection, taking out his second stage win of the tour so far. But it was a day for the Aussies. Sam Wilson, of course, 27-year-old, taking out the stage. Luke Burns from the Australian national team, he once again had an early breakaway from the pack and took as many King of the Mountain points as he could to extend his lead in the King of the Mountain classification. So he'll once again wear the green and white polka dot jersey going into today. Not so great news for Aussie road champion Luke Plapp. He had a nasty crash yesterday. That is going to hinder his chances at the tour win or stage wins heading into the final 3 days. But Del Toro, he's holding on to that lead, holding on to that ochre jersey going into stage 4 today.
And stage 4 is a relatively flat stage today, Charles.
Yeah, it is 136 kilometres, starting in Murray Bridge, finishing in Port Adelaide on the Fleurieu Peninsula. There's only about 1,000 metres of climbing, so it is a sprinter's delight today, but it is going to be looking to the weekend, the final 2 stages, where this race can really be won or lost. We've got Wollonga Hill tomorrow. That is a notorious stretch of climbing for these cyclists, and on Sunday finishing in Mount Lofty. So an opportunity over the next, over the final 2 days for the climbers, and that is really where we can see a big change up in the leaderboard at the front. So anything could happen in these final 3 days, Melissa. It is set to be some exciting racing coming ahead.
Here are the top stories on ABC News. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has opposed the establishment of a Palestinian state as part of any post-war scenario. Earlier this week, the US Secretary Antony Blinken reiterated a pathway to statehood for Palestinians could help improve Israel's security. But Mr. Netanyahu rejected the suggestion, saying Israel needs full control of Palestinian territory. At least 9 people have been killed in Iran in Pakistani airstrikes as tensions escalate across the region. Pakistan struck the suspected terrorist hideouts in the southeast of the country yesterday after Iran targeted Israel-linked militant bases. Pakistan says the strikes were in pursuit of their own security. Police allege a large stash of Lego they found during a drug raid in Victoria is the proceeds of crime. Authorities seized more than $600,000 worth of drugs after searching 5 properties after a months-long investigation. Police allege the Lego collection, as well as a stash of luxury watches, are the proceeds of crime. And Anna Blinkova has claimed victory in 3-set thriller against third seed Elena Rybakina, clinching a historic tiebreak. The Russian survived the longest tiebreak in women's Grand Slam history, winning 6-4, 4-6, 7-6, with the deciding part of the match extending for more than 30 minutes. Foreign Minister Penny Wong is wrapping up her trip to the Middle East after meeting with both Israeli and Palestinian officials. She's reiterated calls for a ceasefire and a 2-state solution in her first official trip to the occupied West Bank. Political analyst and former Palestinian Authority spokesperson Noor O'Dare says the enormity of what's happening in Gaza overshadows everything occurring in the West Bank.
Palestinians at this moment are really overwhelmed with what is happening. And even if they live in the West Bank, they have loved ones, family members, friends, and colleagues who are displaced, hungry, and under threat of losing their life in Gaza at this moment. So, short of someone having a dramatic call for a ceasefire, announcing something dramatic by way of airdropping, assistance or calling for accountability for suspected war crimes being committed, it's difficult really to compete with the unbelievable suffering that is now transpiring in Gaza. But there was no negative coverage, and I think that contrasted with a lot of other visits from other officials, is a good thing.
Senator Wong has pushed for a ceasefire during her visit, but she's also said that Israel has a right to defend itself. The Foreign Minister says that that's not a contradiction in her mind, but how is that being received in the Middle East?
Well, so far, the claim that what Israel is doing right now is an act of self-defense is, first of all, deeply troubling and offensive to Palestinians who are enduring the crushing assault of the Israeli military, but also contested by human rights experts and by human rights organizations who point to pervasive violations of international humanitarian law. Having said that, the call for ceasefire is important because it is part of the growing international consensus. It is one of the many ironies and disappointments of this, continuing war, that a call for a ceasefire, a call for a dialogue, has somehow turned out to be controversial. It is very difficult to understand for Palestinians, for human rights experts, that a call to end the killing can be construed as controversial. You can have, your positions towards Israel and what its rights are and are not. But some countries who continue to refuse to call for a ceasefire have really managed to offend every single Palestinian in the world. So Australia is not in that corner, but there's still a lot of work to be done in order to really reach the hearts and minds in terms of policy on what can be done to move things forward, because this is not just about the war, it's about the wider political framework of what is happening on the ground, and the fact that there needs to be a solution, an end to this deadlocked situation where Palestinians are perpetually occupied and then denied their rights within